for.
Our property, and then just on the road, right?
Oh,
And then
really?
in the back, they cleared some, now the raspberries. So we had pancakes this morning for breakfast. Oh, those are raspberries. So good.
So good.
I don't know, and I just love the mild raspberries so much.
Oh, I know, they have so much more flavor. And there's
Wait, and the seed, I really like seeds in them.
Yeah. They are, I like the, they often little stuff like base, but there's a tiny little plaque of sugar. So it's 1 o'clock by my clock. So I will call the meeting to order. The first thing we do is a roll call, and we're done. So we have a quorum, including Jean, who is remote. So the next item is a declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest in writing or verbal? Seeing none, we'll proceed to the adoption of the agenda. So resolve that the agenda for the March 3rd, 2025 Finance and Administration Advisory Committee meeting be adopted as presented. We need someone to move. So I see Jeff Atkinson moves and Paul Pinto seconds. All in favor? Motion is carried. All right, now we move on to the main business. And I should indicate that we are using the new audio visual system that was installed. So hopefully everyone can hear what we're saying. I don't have to push any buttons for microphones, and hopefully everything's going okay, Kelly. Okay. All right, so the next item is the approval of the minutes of the finance, resolve that the minutes of the Finance and Administration Advisory Committee meeting held on November 28th, 2024, be received and approved as printed. I need someone to move. I see Mary moves. I see Roy seconds. Any comments on the minutes? All in favor? Okay, the motion is approved. And now we move into a presentation on the investment policy and 2025 strategy by Stacy.
Good afternoon. As people know, it's been a while. We have not had a policy or strategy much before. To date, we've been using GICs and our bank accounts earn interest. So we have been getting some growth, but we'd like to work on, now that we're actively building the capital reserves, work on getting better rate of return. Did various research, and one investment, which is going to do a presentation after me, is my recommendation for using for a broker for the investments. Keeping in mind that we have public funds and we want to be careful with them, so not get into risky investments.
Crypto.
No, definitely not part of our planned investment mix. And we currently have about 3 million in various GICs, so looking to transfer that to an investment broker and to work and continue to grow our capital reserves. Look, with one investment and anywhere else I've been looking, trying to keep things conservative, looking at a mix. If you look at table 1, in the investment policy, it lists simplified saving account, which is 100% secure, looking to the next phase of potential. Some risk would be Canadian government bonds or Canadian corporate bonds. And again, part of this is start off and just get us in there. As our capital investments grow, we may potentially look at something a little more risky further down, but I would see that not being until we have fully 100% or more of our capital reserves. Currently, we're at about 40%, but we are targeting over the next few years bigger than that. So, if anyone has specific questions?
Actually, I mean, everyone else does anyway. I'm just a little worried about the Canadian equity entry. And if we end up approving this policy, does that mean that we don't need to come back to the board?
Oh, no. So the investment mix would be reviewed every year. When we approve the 10-year capital plan, we're looking at what the outline is, it would come to the board, as well as potential reallocation of what we're investing. So that is in the policy.
I'm gonna say it's item 4D in the policy. The board shall review and approve the investment mix following the annual updated requirement capital plan. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. Before we go into the presentation by one investment, are there any other questions or comments? I'm trying to see something.
I have a question.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead, Jean.
Just in the report, it said that it would be reviewed twice annually. Do we have any idea when, time-wise?
It's a minimum of twice annually, and I would see that when I'm presenting, I actually probably expect it to be more quarterly when I present the financial update.
Okay, thank you.
Paul?
So I'm trying to understand this. I read somewhere, I'm scrolling here trying to find it. And it talks about the capital reserves on your chart.
Yes.
And it highlights the category 3 capital reserve and then growing at 9%. Category 3 is like to do versus a must have. And I'm trying to rationalize why that needs to be so much higher. You're saying you're only at 9% right now, and why you want to take it up a whole lot, right? I would rather see the money in category 1, category 2, instead of something that should be basically a handed out type thing. You can do it or you can't do it, but we're not gonna blow a bunch of reserve money on to keep going if it's not paying up.
Yes.
So, do you mind if we park that question until we get to that agenda item, because that's.
Okay, that's the agenda. I found it earlier.
It
There's
is
a bunch of money
elsewhere.
being allocated over there, and that's what I was
Yeah.
concerned. Okay, fine. That's somewhere else.
All right, are there any other questions? I have one other one before we go in. Who else did you look at other than one investment?
So I looked at our own bank, and Bill had recommended for the groups, so I have reached out to them. Part of it was the management equity ratio is quite low with one investment. A third.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to know who else you
Oh,
looked at.
okay.
Like, well, how big was the pool?
It wasn't very big, I'll be honest, and part of that was the security, and our management of it.
Yes, sir.
The other reason being that this is used by other municipalities, like it's sort of like the broker of choice of many jurisdictions, so. And it's required to adhere to the municipal act, which a lot of our members, of course, are obligated under, so it just, from that perspective, seemed to make sense as well.
Yeah, no, I did see that. I'm not familiar with that, not being in that world, but I just was curious if there were any other companies that serve that world. How many you looked at, that's all.
Yeah, I didn't find any others, and I know I did speak with South Nation. And they opted to stay with their bank, but they're having to spend time overseeing and managing and monitoring. Is the mix right, et cetera. They have more staff and resources to do that. Part of this for us in getting into it is, it's not my background. And one investment has a board that includes municipal people that are helping advise and make sure it's safe.
Right, okay, great, thank you. All right, with that, I guess we can go to the presentation by one investment.
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very well.
Okay. So thank you for having us today. I will be starting off the presentation, and Mr. Taylor will be finishing it up. My name is Jennifer Hess. I'm the Manager of Investment Services for MFWA, so the Municipal Finance Officers Association. And Keith Taylor is the Chief Investment Officer for One Investment. So I'm just going to share my screen. Are you able to see, is the presentation coming over? Okay, great. So thank you very much again for having us today. So we just wanted to start off with basically providing a high-level overview of who we are. So we are a not-for-profit organization dedicated to really servicing the investment needs of Ontario municipalities and their various municipal boards, and we also assist a number of conservation authorities within the province. Currently, we are managing about 4.7 billion of portfolio holdings as of January 2025. We were established back in 1993, and we're jointly operated by two nonprofits. So we really are a nonprofit being run by two non-profits. So, right, so we've got the Local Authority Services, which is the business services arm for AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and CHUMS, which is a subsidiary of MFOA, the Municipal Finance Officers Association. We were incorporated back in 1918, oh my gosh, 2018. And we really do provide oversights by municipalities and investment industry experts. So we are currently servicing about 40% of all Ontario municipalities. We're also servicing about 20 other entities, including 6 conservation authorities within the province. So we are not just for the large guys, we are for the small guys. We actually get a lot more satisfaction helping out the smaller organizations within the province because they may not necessarily have a manpower or a detailed and heavy finance team to help figure things out. Back in 2018, One Investment received an exemption from the Ontario Securities Commission, and that allows us to provide unbiased investment advice at no cost to whoever we are servicing. We like to say education and assisting you is our primary focus. So even if it's not with our products, we are happy to provide advice on where the market may be going, what would be the best mix based on what your investment outcome is. You know, when you've put money aside, you're either putting aside with various considerations, such as, you know, asset preservation, wanting to make sure you keep the principal, or protecting your buying power in an inflationary economy, or even growing those funds to meet future capital needs within your organization. So depending on, and as things move through your capital forecast and they get closer, your investment outcome will change. So it's not one size fits all. We're here to continually advise as you have questions, and we're we'll help you tailor the appropriate mix of investments to not only minimize risk wherever possible, and Mr. Taylor will speak a bit more about minimizing risk, but allowing you to do whatever can be possible to meet your investment outcomes. So our investment advisory services includes a number of people, including Mr. Taylor, who's a chief CFA charter holder with about 30 years of industry experience on Bay Street. Myself, I come with 15 years of the municipal sector experience, primarily in cash flow, budgeting, financial forecasting, things like that in the municipal sector. We also have members of our team who are able to advise on policy and legislation and anything else that your organization may need assistance with. So it was alluded to that we do follow the Municipal Act because we really, in the Municipal Act, there really are 2 investment roads. There is the legal list, which in that case, investments remain under the care and control of the treasurer, and that will be the focus of our presentation today. There's also this prudent investor stream, which actually came into play in 2019. And it's an option available if you're interested in the future. And it really involves bringing in an investment board and delegation to that investment board of investment decisions based on your investment policy. So what are permitted investments under the legal list? They really are 100% Canadian. So we, first off the bat, we have our high interest savings account. And then we also have 3 commingled portfolios, the Canadian government bond, the Canadian corporate bond, and the Canadian equity. You'll see the intended duration, and that is our recommended duration. However, we do have organizations that have invested far longer in some of these products because that is where they are comfortable investing in these portfolios. And so they've parked their money and have never moved it. So it really is, this is our intended duration, our recommendation, but it does not have to, you do not have to pull your money out after that period of time. Oops, sorry. So our high interest savings account is essentially a bank account. We've got 2 offers. We have one with Scotiabank and one with CIBC. They would come with the same protection that every other bank you would have with a deposit. Currently, we've got about 800 million in our 2 high interest savings accounts. One offers an interest rate currently of 3.525. That is tied to prime, which is prime less 1.675, I believe it is. It's a Monday afternoon, so if I've got that number slightly wrong, please forgive me. I'm doing it off my memory. But as prime, as you know, it was really low for a number of years, and then it went sky high, and now it's on its way back down. So the rate will fluctuate as prime changes. And now I will pass it on to Mr. Taylor, who will talk about the other 3 commingled portfolios.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, so the current rate on our piece of product is about 3.5%, give or take. As Jennifer noted, that is subject to what happens with the Bank of Canada and the interest rate, so that will change over time. This gives a snapshot of the returns on our other funds, and these are over different time frames. For fixed income investments, the returns, as we all know, have been pretty good over the last couple of years as interest rates have increased. We're at a stage now where rates have starting to come down. So yeah, over the last year, this is the end of January, the government bond fund had returns of about 6%, and the corporate bond portfolio had returns of about 6.5%. Over longer periods of time, bonds typically will give you a return somewhere in the range of the inflation rate. The one thing I would like to highlight is the Canadian equity, which may not be the comfort zone for you. But over long periods of time, Canadian equities have tended to, there's more risk involved. And when you assume more risk, there tends to be much higher return potential. Over the last year in January, it's been about 19% returns for the Canadian equity fund. And then over a 10-year period, the average has been about 9.13. These fees are net. These are net of fees. This is after all fees have been baked in, and these are broadly in line with the underlying benchmarks. Next slide, please. As we're talking about fees, the way fees work, these are baked into the portfolio, deducted from the portfolio, so there's nothing invoiced or paid directly by our clients. And there's a set fee structure that covers everything involved in running these portfolios, which includes buying and selling the securities, keeping them out of custodian, and all the other costs involved. For a government bond fund, it's 40 basis points, that is 0.4% per year. For the corporate bonds is 45 basis points, and the Canadian equity is 50 basis points. There are no direct fees associated with our high interest savings plan. But again, you're not invoiced on fees directly. Next slide. In terms of governance, One Investment we have our own board, which provides oversight, both of our policy, the design of our products, and provides oversight of the administration of One Investment. This board includes 9 municipal representatives and 1 industry expert with a CFA. For the legal list, we have a special committee that looks at investments with us. This is a body comprised of investment sector experts. We have several CFAs on it, and they provide oversight of the external managers that manage the funds. And well, they provide guidance on these products on an ongoing basis. Next slide, please. Now, I have 3 slides which may take you out of your comfort zone. I promise this. They're basic investment themes, and if the idea is to make your money work for you in the best way it could, it means assuming some risks. And the benefit of diversification is that it helps to offset some of that risk. And this is particularly useful for investors that have a very long investment horizon, which I think is the case with you. Next slide, please. This next slide shows 3 different investment types. One is, it says the T-bill index. This is basically money market investments. And this shows the rolling 1-year returns. And you'll see that the rolling 1-year returns of the blue line, the money market funds, has been very stable. No surprises. It also doesn't provide a great deal of returns over the long period of time. The next one I would point to is the red line, which shows the Canadian bond market. This shows that, you know, returns have tended to be a little bit higher, but there's a little bit more volatility involved. And lastly, the green line showing the Canadian equity market, which on a previous slide showed that the long-term returns, the 10-year returns, have been somewhere in the range of 9%. It oscillates, it goes up and down, and it can have good years and bad years. So there is more risk involved, but with that, there's a higher helping of potential returns. Next slide, please. One thing that's that really illustrates the point of diversification, I mean, it's really of having equity markets and bond markets marching to a different drummer. And we saw in times of crisis, these 2 markets go in different directions. When the economy is doing poorly, the equity markets tend to perform poorly. And the central banks or the government needs to step in. And very often interest rates end up reacting to a poor economic environment. And you see the bond markets and equity markets completely out of sync, which is the point of diversification. If you take a look at the table we have here, the chart, the red periods show periods when the Canadian equity market has been having really bad years, where they have experienced returns, negative returns of more than 7.5%. And these do happen infrequently. But in those periods, bond markets, because interest rates are often adjusted to counteract, bond returns often are either positive or they're actually quite positive. So if you have both of these investments in your portfolio, the bonds tend to act as an anchor that provides stability to the overall portfolio. There's a bit of an offset. When equities are doing poorly, bonds tend to counteract. And the last slide, well, what does this mean in the overall context? Well, we have two markets here. We're assuming that $100 is invested in 2002. And what happened with those investments if you did nothing and just sat on those investments to the end of last year? Or actually, yeah, and in this case, if you invested only in bonds, your $100 would have grown to a bit more than $200. And, you know, the growth is important. And the stability in that line is quite apparent. Equities. Again, if you had invested in 2002 in equities and didn't touch it, your $100 would have grown to over $700. Yes, there's volatility, but the message here is if you have a very, very long investment horizon, and you invest only in fixed income, there's an opportunity cost. Yeah, I'm not saying you should put all your money in equities. That's the worst thing possible. That's too much volatility. But I think that if you're investing for the long term, equities needs to be part of the mix. And done in conjunction with a healthy allocation to fixed income. But equities are the engine of growth, and they will lead to returns, or they should lead to returns that would exceed inflation, which is hard to do investing only in fixed income. So those are the three charts and the messages embedded. Diversification and a bit of equity, I think, would be appropriate for your circumstances. And with that, I think that's the last slide in our deck. I think we'd be glad to answer any questions as needed.
Great, are there any questions for one investment? I have one, and, you know, I look at your bond, the last slide. Is that after inflation is taken into account? Because, I mean, bonds are yielding interest, and if you're plowing the interest back in the bond, or like that, I don't think that graph reflects that.
Well, I mean, this is the thing with when you're investing in fixed income, you should expect a return that broadly matches inflation. Depending upon how it's done, perhaps you can get a little bit more. Over the last year, last couple of years, the returns for bonds have been very, very robust. And it's been a fairly decent place to be because it's low risk, and you can the returns in certain cases have been more than 5%. Over long periods of time, it's much, much lower. So that is the risk, and the risk is you may not lose money in terms of purchasing power, but there's an opportunity cost. You know, your funds could be working harder for you, and you could get more growth if at least some of it was invested in equities. But yeah, it has matched inflation pretty much.
Yeah, no, but I just, does the slide, is it adjusted for inflation?
No, these are nominal. If it were adjusted for inflation, the bonds would be pretty much flat.
Okay, it's just odd to me. As someone with my own investment portfolio, I just find it a really odd graph, that's all. So, all right, any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
So just picking up on what you said, so looking at that slide again, if you wouldn't mind, Jennifer, pulling it up again. So when I look at 2008, for example, is that dollar amount quoted in 2008 dollars, 2002 dollars, or current day dollars? Like, is each year the value of the portfolio in the year in which the revenue, you know, it's valued at? Or are they all valued in its one year?
Those are nominal dollars. There's no inflation adjustment at all. So yeah, this is not showing inflation adjustments at all. And you're right to point out that time in 2008, because equity markets can misbehave, and they certainly misbehaved at that period of time. And if I may, we actually had one investor. We launched our equity fund, our equity portfolio in 2007, and one of our initial investors, the municipality of Clarington, put money in just before the great financial crisis happened, and they had immediate losses, but as you can see it in the chart, by sitting on their investments and not selling, the passage of time allowed the better growth in equities to let that investment float back up above their initial investment. And that's the risk with equities, that the sharp movements can lead to immediate losses. But if the investment horizon is long, as it was for Clarington, they were able to recoup their money and make great profits. And I believe it was in the realm of 2012, 2013, where their money, the money they invested, recouped, and it was actually above where they invested. And
Yeah, that's no, I know, we don't need to get into that detail. Are there any other comments or questions from an investor? Yes, so Mary Lou?
I just wondered, this table shows intended duration. I'm referring to table 1 of the package, page 12 of 39, investment periods and approach. Obviously, they have different intended durations and different uses within a portfolio. What is the intended mix for us?
Stacy or Kelly?
We were looking at it being, trying to tie it to an extent with our 10-year capital plan. And when we're looking at potentially needing to take it out. So those timeframes is the intended minimum that I'm looking at. I may need those funds in that time.
Yeah, go
Add to
ahead,
that.
Sally.
So the actual strategy proposed for 2025, the mix is 25% in Canadian corporate bonds and 75% in Canadian government bonds. That's on pages 9 and 10 of the agenda package. So the strategy you're being asked to sign off on is that 25, 75 mix
For this year.
for this year.
Right.
And the policy is that we review that every year with the capital plan and the board approves any change.
Right. Are there any questions for one investment? We could let them go if we're done with them. You done with them? All right, thank you very much. We appreciate your time and presentation. So we'll let you go and we'll get back to our meeting here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Very much.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay. I don't like that graph. There's just something wrong with it.
Yeah.
So you've got to think there's something wrong with that graph. It's just weird to me. I'm not saying that they're bad or good to go with, but it's not, well, it's just this flat line for bonds. I think if you're looking at the value of the bond itself, if you look at the value of the bond itself, but it's not reflecting the interest payments from that bond, from those bonds. Like it can't be, there is just no way. Like if someone, I just.
But we don't know what the interest rate is.
Well, you do, over time that these Canadian bonds have, they're paying a certain amount of interest. That's not even reflecting that. And whether you're compounding that back in or taking it out, there's something weird
I
about
don't know if it's the length of time, but if you're going from 100 to 200, it's doubled over the. He's not talking about increasing your investments, just put
Right.
100 in
it.
and
No, I understand. I say, so you're not like reinvesting the interest or anything like that. You're taking interest in.
Yeah, it's reinvest.
No, you have to reinvest it, otherwise it will grow.
Well, it could, depending on the value of the bond, right? Because it depends on whether, I'm thinking of it like an ETF, right? So it's not like you bought a bunch of the face value of the bond, in which case the underlying investment doesn't change. But if you're buying an ETF, they could have bought that bond above or below its face value. Inflation goes up, the bond values go down. Inflation goes down, the bond values go up, which is what's happening right now, which is why you have these great returns on the actual value of the bonds. Right, so it's just, I don't know, it's just weird to me. Anyway, I'm not saying they're bad or anything, it's just an odd way to present the information.
I think the goal was to demonstrate the stability of the fund more than anything else, because that's really what we're after is making sure that if we put $400 into our reserves today, that it's worth $400 20 years from now, not one. The time
more
comes.
than.
Hopefully, yeah. Well, hopefully more, but
Yes.
ideally, it's making sure that our money doesn't lose value to inflation over time while we're setting it aside for capital projects in particular.
The only other comment I'll make is that the high interest savings account had a better return than what he was showing for bonds. When you had that chart up there. Okay, and yes, there were good returns in the last few years because inflation has come down, so interest rates have come down, so bond values have gone up. But the other returns were terrible. So I'm just wondering, I mean, I know high interest, the savings account, the rate will go down over time as the interest goes down. I'm not saying these guys are bad or anything. I'm just sort of find it just odd, and I'm wondering whether you could do just as well just doing GICs.
No, they've come down significantly.
Yeah, no, I know.
Right now. So it was, the idea was to be trying to find a bit of a mix, still be somewhat stable. They are focused on Canadian, part of that's because of who they are and we are, keeping money within Canada, and they're focused on being more secure because of being municipal and public funds.
Right.
I could definitely, we could go to another investment company and be risky. I was trying to avoid that, and I was also trying to limit the amount of oversight that we need to do in monitoring.
No, and I understand that, and also there's less risk in choosing a group that has been chosen by a whole bunch of other municipalities. I mean, I understand that.
But under the risk factors, there's only so much risk we're allowed to.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's the advantage of going to them.
right.
They're working under the risk limit.
Are there any of the municipalities
We do.
in that are who use these guys at all? So there's no one with any experience using it in the,
I'm not sure, I'd have to, I can ask.
Not that we're aware
Yeah,
of.
we just use them.
They do, he didn't get into it a lot, they do have a longer term, and they mentioned the prudent investor stream. It does allow for more flexibility and potentially even getting into foreign markets and equities if you wanted. I didn't want to look at starting. This is, we're just getting
No, I
into
get it,
this, so I was
yeah.
trying to be
Okay.
conservative.
Yeah, go ahead, Sally. Okay. Sorry, Richard.
Yeah, I think the problem is that I think there's only two choices. It's these guys or the bank. And these guys, like it's run by AMO, basically. And AMO is all of the municipalities in Ontario. And so if you want to play around, this is it. If this was a year ago, I would have said, no, just GICs and invest in long-term GICs. And that's how we start off. But if you want to use the guys.
Okay.
But I'm not saying it's going to be any better than the bank at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it's about risk
Right, so,
or lack of risk.
right. Mary, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did, and it's, first of all, our mix at the moment, our forecasting is all in bonds. And that's extremely low risk. And it's an extremely low risk strategy that's not much different than GICs. And our discussion is all about risk and equities. And I don't know a lot about it, but I do know that basically when you're being sold a mutual funds package, it involves both bonds and equity, some percentage of equity. And actually, I don't see any equities here in this strategy. So I agree with Richard that the people are not out for their own profit. They are AMO's investment arm. In that sense, yes, they can be trusted. They're trusted by AMO. And we're a long way from having to have spirited discussions about equity because there's none in here.
Yeah, no, I'm not having that conversation, I'm not what I'm proposing. I'm with Richard, I think you have to stay with the bank, or it sounds like these are the only guys, the only game in town, like, everyone else must just use their banks. All right, so did you have something you want to say, Sally, before we move on here?
I did want to say that as part of the policy, it says that in the part of the motion that we asked is to sign off on a limited time frame. So let's try them for the next 2 years.
Right, I was gonna ask that.
So let's, we're looking for board authorization to use them for the next 2 years, and then we can reevaluate,
So when's that 750K come up, when is it mature?
This week.
Ah, okay.
And the rest is over the next, till the end of April.
Okay, so you
I
look-
had been shortening them too, because I knew this was coming in the next few months. I've been shortening the GICs down to 3 months. to get ready for this. But the rates have been really dropped. They've dropped in half over where they were a year.
Well, I was just more concerned about the impact of tomorrow, if tomorrow actually happens. And holding off on, we don't know that. Again, yeah, holding, we're in the same boat here.
It might be happening in a month.
Yeah.
The issue really will be, they go based on, anyway, they go based on the Bank of Canada interest rate. I don't know when the next meeting, but that's when they would drop it potentially. So yes, Paul.
So I guess my only question is, if we go with this for now, I don't have a problem, but there's the other side of what are you directing them to do? And not hearing. I mean,
So
it's
we
great
were-
to say to Stacy, say, well, you know, take the $750,000, but
Well, they've indicated what the investment mix would be for 2025.
Yes,
And that's,
so,
I believe that's what we'll be recommending to the board.
yes. So it was looking at being, I believe it was 750 in the Canadian corporate bonds and the balance in the Canadian government bonds. And then our current operating, et cetera, is in savings
Right,
accounts.
so essentially, I'm gonna read the resolution and we can have like, so let me read it so you know what you're approving here. So resolve that the Finance and Administration Committee recommend that the Board of Directors approve the investment policy attached to this report. The 2025 investment strategy set out in this report, which is the 2575 next. And the transfer of investments to one investment as set out in this report during the next 2 fiscal years, which is the trial run to see how they're doing. So I need someone to move. So Jeff moves, Mary Lou seconds. Are there any other comments? All in favor? Okay, so it looks like the motion is carried. So thank you very much. With all of the research that you've done.
So nothing will happen until this goes through the board,
Correct.
No,
so the day after tomorrow.
next Monday.
Yeah. Yeah. How's this not working? No, she can't.
It's up.
All right, well, who knows? All right, we're on to the next item, which is the Palmerston Beach property transfer, which we've been talking about for years and years. Another one of these. So this is a report by Scott.
So I guess we'll try it from up here, everybody can hear me just as well as they used to when we had the mics. So I do come with some good news. Actually, on 2 of our fronts when it comes to a couple of our properties, the first being the beach at Palmerston County that has been part of the lease to North Frontenac for a number of years. So in 2017, we started the process of attempting to transfer that property to North Frontenac. Unfortunately, we came up against some title issues with the budding landowner. Happy to say that we've just recently completed taking care of those title issues. We're now in a position to be able to complete the transfer to North Frontenac. And as part of that, we were able to submit a letter to the minister's office to notify them of our intent to transfer the property. So that starts the clock, the 90-day clock. It gives the minister the ability to be able to comment on that transfer. Now, due to the nature of the title issues and the complexity of having to deal with those, it does come with a legal bill of just north of $8,600, to which we're recommending that we share that cost with the township of North Rock. So just a quick update on that property. That's where things sit right now, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
So, I guess when you said you're recommending North Frontenac split that cost, how are you going to convey that message?
So I'll write a letter to your CAO requesting that that item be brought to your council for consideration. Just for clarity, the original, I won't say standing offer, but that's not the right term, but the standing offer on that property from the township originally said that MVCA would pick up all of the legal costs, but nobody anticipated at that time that it would be such a lengthy and costly process. So that's why we need to go back to the township.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mary Lou?
Well, the next logical question is, you've made the first step. What happens if the township says no?
So we do have an agreement with the township that says that MVCA would pay the full legal costs. And I think, you know, I think in conversations with Roy, that he will do his best at council to, you know, put forward the position of MVCA, but if council denies it, then we have an agreement with the township that we have to honor.
So we're just counting on the goodwill.
Basically, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, but we also have to remind them that they're getting a prime piece of property that their residents will use and enjoy, so always bring it back to the residents and their usage, and I think they'll be reasonable.
Part of the plan.
Yeah,
The 50% might not go through, but we kept it at 50%, so I can negotiate to 25%. So we'll see how it goes.
All right, I'll read the resolution. Resolved that the Finance and Administration Committee recommend that the Board of Directors direct the General Manager to petition the Township of North Frontenac to contribute 50% towards the legal fees incurred by MVCA to provide clear title of the Palmerston Beach property for the township. I need someone to move.
I would move that.
All right, so we have Jeannie and Roy. So good to see Roy. And any comments? All in favor? Like the motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Sorry, just one comment. I have spoken to the mayor about this.
Oh, you have? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so hopefully at the next board meeting, we can break out the champagne. Compliments of North Frontenac.
Yeah, no, I have to go to the board then to know.
Yes, that's right. I was gonna say, but it'll be compliments of North Frontenac.
Well, no, I won't go and vote.
All right.
Probably end up just being white grape juice.
All right, so while Scott is still up there, we'll move on to another long-standing topic, which is the KMP Trail transfer agreements.
So again, we've definitely made some great strides when it comes to the KMP Trail. As you remember, so early 2024, we're provided with 3 documents in relation to the trail. So there was a draft purchase and sale agreement from Lanark County that's acting on behalf of all 3 counties, a draft lease agreement, and then a memo of all the accompanying title issues with the trail. So at that point, there were a couple clauses in there that were of concern to the authority. One of them being that within the purchase and sale agreement, we were required to pay 50% of the surveying and legal costs at the first, I guess, flush of the cost. They were looking estimated upwards of $350,000 to be able to complete that side of things. To which point MVCA would owe $175,000. As drafted, the lease agreement would allow the counties to take over operation immediately of the entire length of the trail, which would include the spaces that there are land title issues. Within that agreement, it required MVCA to reimburse the counties for any monies on any leaseholder improvement that would have been done by the counties if for whatever reason the purchase and sale agreement is not able to be, I guess, fully executed. So since receiving these documents, we've had conversations with legal counsel, and we've been back and forth with Lanark County, who again acting on behalf of all 3 counties. So we now have current documents that are now the current purchase and sale agreement is broken into 3 stages. So stage number 1 is the properties that we're able to convey to the counties right away that are unencumbered by any sort of title issues. Stage 2 are properties that would require some sort of legal action to be able to, I guess, correct the title issues, to be able to then convey those properties. And stage 3 would be properties that would require a crown patent to be able to complete the process. So as the current document in the purchase and sale agreement is structured, the counties would be responsible for all the costs in terms of any sort of surveying or legal fees outside of crown patents. That was a shared cost in there. However, in the event, again, that the purchase and sale agreement cannot go through for whatever reason, 100% of those costs would fall back on the authority. So within the lease agreement, the latest lease agreement is only with the counties of Lanark and Renfrew. So Frontenac had opted out of the current document. It is a 5-year document and can be terminated by either party at the end of that 5-year period. So again, in the event the lease is terminated by no fault of the counties, MVCA would be required to reimburse 100% of those capital improvements that we talked about before. So there is a bit of back-end risk to the authority when it comes to the current documents. Now on the third document that accompanied those with the title issues, it was first thought that not much of the trail would have title issues, and after internal review, we've discovered it's approximately 70% of the trail would have some sort of legal issues that are attached to it. So it's going to require a fair amount of work to be able to clear those up. So based on the concerns of these documents, we were able to send back what our recommendations would be to Lanark in terms of mitigating some risk from our end on these. So the first part, to mitigate future financial risks, we were recommending putting an offset limit of $25,000 a year in terms of capital infrastructure into the trail, in which if the counties wish to go beyond that, they would be able to bring a proposal back to the board of directors, in which it would be up to them to approve any such expenditure that is greater than $25,000 a year. Similarly, we're proposing that MVCA provide upfront costs of up to $10,000 per year over the life of the agreement for the legal costs and surveying costs associated with cleaning up the titles on some of those land parcels. And then the last piece is based on our experiences we just talked about with the beach at Palmerston. We're recommending a 10-year lease agreement. The issue with that is it would go outside of what the Conservation Authorities Act would allow without ministerial approval. So we would have to seek ministerial approval to be able to extend the lease to a 10-year agreement. So those drafted amendments were received well by the County of Lanark, and they're going to be passed on to Frontenac and Renfrew for comment. And then also, we were able to have a conversation with the County of Frontenac on their involvement in the lease, and based on current circumstances, staff are going to revisit the option of being involved with the lease. It comes down more so to the ability for proper maintenance to be done on the trail and where responsibility would lie. If we were to turn over the properties that are free and clear in terms of title, it's going to turn into a bit of a puzzle as to where responsibility would lie in terms of if we were still responsible for the properties that we can't turn over, there's going to be a bit of an issue as to where the line is going to be, as to where those where the responsibility is going to lie for property maintenance and that sort. So they're going to have some internal conversations with the hopes to be able to bring it back to their council in the near future, and hopefully they'll be looking to be part of the lease as well. So, and then in the meantime, we'll be working with political leadership to seek approval from the minister to be able to extend that lease to a 10-year.
All right, are there any questions or comments? Yes, Paul.
Sure, I have a comment. So I just did the math for 125, so potentially $175,000 exposure over 5 years. That's $25,000 a year, and then 10,000 on the other side. What's the point of getting rid of it if it's just going to cost us a bundle of money, except to keys with that?
We're not paying $25,000.
Yes,
No.
if it doesn't go unpacked,
Oh.
then it
Doesn't
goes
keep
back
back
in. Yeah. And we've got 70%. I thought we were like 10, 15%. When you tell me there's 70% of it has got legal issues, we're sitting here, this is lawyer heaven. We're going to make it kill it. And I'm just sitting here saying, put some damn bollards or both in it and say it's closed.
Yeah,
Sorry, but it's,
yeah,
yeah.
very good.
Well, I'm so new that I don't know the background of all of this, but as I listen to it, I agree with Paul. First, I have a question. How much does the trail cost us to maintain now? And how much has it cost us over the last 10 years per year? And will these lease agreements to the county get rid of maintenance costs to us? I assume so, otherwise why are we doing this?
Sorry? Okay, so. Picking up on what Richard said, the 25,000 per year is only in the event that everything goes bust, right? And it was 50% of the 25,000 per year, right? So it's 12.5. So that's number one. The $10,000 per year is to mitigate that downstream potential risk of having to pay for all of the legal costs. So take a share of the legal surveying cost up front, because if everything does go bust, it's an asset, an investment that we will benefit from because we will, be clarifying our title. As it relates to the amount we're investing into today and mitigating maintenance costs. So Post is, I think, in the 1990s with the provincial cutbacks. The board actually made a decision then to minimize investment in the KMP asset. Like they just bought it in 91. They made a significant investment, and then within 8 years they were turning the different direction, saying actually we have to basically stop investing. Now, when you stop investing in an asset, as you all know, that asset deteriorates, and the condition of the KMP trail in certain sections is dangerous. Now, to mitigate your risk, you could do things like put up bollards. You can put in signs, and you can do capital improvements and put money into the maintenance. However, the asset in some areas is so degraded that the amount of investment required is very significant. Number two, when we have put up signage, most signage is down within the week sort of thing, anecdotally. Things on the KMP warning signs, things like speed limits, all that sort of stuff, any sort of do not hunt, all those kind of signage have a very short half-life. They don't last very long out there. So our ability to properly demarcate that you are using this at your risk and mitigating our risk from that perspective has proven a challenge to actually implement. So when you look at as well, then the long-term opportunity of a collective, sort of higher level government investing in that asset to mitigate those risks and also to capitalize on it as a tourism asset within the broader community. I think that it does make sense for us to transfer it to them. Yes, invariably, we will incur those sort of upfront legal costs. But by doing that, I think it makes it more attractive to the counties to take on. And by taking it on under a lease agreement, they will be the ones making those maintenance improvements. We have allowed 25 per year. No, 15 per year in the 10-year capital plan?
Yeah, it averages, I think, around 15 per year by the time we get to the end of it.
Right.
And
So our 10-year capital plan already allows us to make a base small amount of investment of $15,000 a year. So we're not going to be on the hook for anything more than we would have spent for our 10-year capital plan. That's how the numbers actually came to be what they are. Is that what would be spent had we invested in the maintenance of that asset? Okay, well then if we're setting that money aside, that's how much we could pay back to the county should this go bust.
Oh, that's great. But the idea was we were going to get rid of this turkey without incurring a whole lot of costs. Okay, as you say, I go in there, they have culverts all the way along. It's a one-time shot, you make it look passable. Yeah, you don't need to stick up signs and say passable, you just have one big sign that says it's not functioning and there's no way to get through. You've got the bridge at that one spot, and if that goes down, you know, like, $1 million to replace that stupid thing. You know, I've driven across it for the last 30 years, but it's there. Like, this was not supposed to be money. This was not supposed to be a money drag in conservation. It was supposed to be something done for the counties. You take it over, you do it. And now the county comes back and are saying, oh no, wait, you gotta pay this, you gotta pay this, you gotta pay this. So, I mean, unfortunately, this board, not the people here, but the board bought this turkey for $1 or whatever, whatever you paid for it. And it was not money well spent. And it just sounds like this is gonna go on forever because you get 70% of these properties sorted out with lawyers. It's going to take a long time. Plus, you've got to do your crown patents and everything else on this. And I'm at the point of being very frustrated with this. The counties aren't coming up and saying, all right, we're going to take it over the way you took it over, and we're going to deal with it. Instead of coming back and saying this, that, and the other thing. If they want it, they want it. If they don't, take it up.
Do you want to say something? Because I was actually going to go to a point where we may be asking staff to go back and bring options back to the board instead. That's what I'm hearing.
Right.
I'm sorry, what I'm hearing is that, and I realize this is mostly you speaking, but there may be people who agree, but we may be at the point where we may be asking staff, maybe not approving this resolution, but instead asking staff to go back and come back with options for this K&P trail, which may include closing it down, may include agreeing to this agreement, may include trying once again to say, okay, look, the art of the deal, you know, which is counties either take it as it is or we're shutting it down.
I mean, it's gonna be a loss, but the other hand is, it wasn't supposed to be.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering if those are what we're gonna add, if those are potentially what people in this room, the committee would like to have staff to go away and then come back to the finance committee and come back to the board on. I'm just looking to see what the feeling in the room is.
So where are these land reserves? Where are they from?
So,
This is the county speaking about.
no,
Wait a sec, I asked a question.
I tried to have mine up for the last 10 minutes, but anyway, okay,
I didn't see you.
go ahead,
So.
turn it back, do this. This is a huge liability for the conservation authority. I don't care what you do with it, you still own it. That liability will come back to haunt you. Somebody will get killed on it, and then you'll be in trouble. This is a huge loss for the county. If I was voting at the county, I'd vote against this. They're taking on the liability that has been built up since whatever year it was, as Paul said, that there hasn't been any maintenance. It's gonna cost us $1 million, county, to get this up to where it can be used by the public. So, you know, if you wanna keep it, keep it. Right?
So getting back to the question, are you looking for a map or what are you
No,
looking?
I'm just looking, like, I only know the aspect of fun, right? It's a beautiful trip and it's used, so, I mean, that's already transferred over to the county. I know there's one dispute up in the north still.
Yeah, so for Frontenac specifically, there's a piece as soon as you come just north of the 509.
Yeah.
And it's clear until south of Woodland.
Right.
So most of the issues to be resolved. So when we say 70%, that's on a linear basis. So if you visualize a 500-acre parcel owned by the Crown, you know, and the trail going through it, that can constitute a fair amount of length, but it's all one owner is what I'm saying. So the 70% isn't 70% of owners, it's 70% by length. Okay, so, and a lot of them are Crown, so fall into that category 3 where the Crown patent is not clear, that province still seems to have some sort of ownership of the parcel. So a lot of that, we do have a map, and when we bring this to the board, we bring that map so that you can see clearly the nature of the encumbrance on these
The
different.
number you
sections.
want is parcels,
Sure.
the number of the percentage of parcels.
Right, so we can bring that number. So that's number one. Number two, most of the encumbrances are actually in Redford, to my recollection, is that not correct?
Well, yeah,
In terms of by parcel, there's a number of
Yeah, for the amount of
parcels.
clear parcels down, we have title issues, Renfrew would probably be
Right.
worse.
So on a number of parcels basis, Renfrew has the most. And it's where we seem to have title, and so does somebody else. In other words, any claim to that property, sort of thing.
Letter, do you have the jurisdiction?
No. probably
Okay, very good.
If most of the problems are in Renfrew, and if the other side would sign a quit claim and go away, and we do not, would it be possible for us to do the same thing? Sign a quit claim to that piece of land and perhaps say goodbye to Renfrew County and have a shorter A and P trail.
So I would highly recommend this. It's right now, we own contiguous length, 35 plus kilometers long. We started to basically not sell off, but renege on our right on certain parcels. Then any opportunity to provide that massive loop of the OVRT, et cetera.
Hey, I was thinking of it as a linear.
No, for that matter, this is like the connecting link between the Havelock, the Tatron, is that what it's called? Yeah, and the OVRT, the goes up to Renfrew. This is the connecting link. We want to maintain that public ownership. Either we own it or the counties jointly own it. So number one, I would say it needs to, first and foremost, it needs to stay in public ownership, whether we retain ownership or the counties take over ownership. It's one or the other. And whoever owns it needs to invest in it, because otherwise, to your point, it's a massive liability from a risk, and public safety perspective. But it has tremendous tourism, recreational, value that I think collectively the counties and conservation authority have an interest in. So right now, what Scott's presented to you is, I think, both a lease agreement and an agreement of purchase and sale that in principle, both Kurt and I, and by extension, we're hoping Renfrew and Frontenac can agree to. Like, we've worked through a lot of these issues, and we think the balance of risk and the balance of cost, both up front and down the road, are fair and reasonable. So as your executive managers at both organizations, I think we've come to a deal. It's a question of whether or not you can support it.
Well, I'll read the resolution and then ask for comments again and then see how the vote is. I think that's where we're at. Okay, so resolved that the Finance and Administration Committee recommend that the Board of Directors authorize the General Manager and Board Chair to finalize and execute agreements with the counties of Lanark, Renfrew, and Frontenac for the lease and acquisition of the K&P Trail as set out in this report. So I need someone to move.
I'll move.
So
I was just playing devil's advocate.
Okay, that's fair enough. Well, you're part of your board chair, so you're gonna be.
I know.
So, Paul so moves, I need someone to second. Roy seconds, all in favor? All right, oh, motion's carried. I was not expecting that. Okay.
Still has to.
Well, I guess, I know, it's like something. All right, so now we have another one on tenant agreements, Scott, again.
So, I guess the purpose of this is just open a discussion and get some general direction on.
Could I, sorry,
Sorry, yes, Richard, sorry.
could I ask one clarification question? For the last, when the OB trail. And I was part of that. And whoever took it couldn't sell it off in pieces under the Railroad Act. But you had to sell it as one piece. That's why the Trans-Canada Trail coming through Beckwith and the Carlton Place is owned by the city of Ottawa. They had to sell it to one, and that's why the old V Trail, we had to form a partnership with Renfrew and, what's it called? No, up above, it's a non-organized, yeah. Anyway, up above, the three of us had to,
Greater Madawaska?
no, something further up. Anyways, and then we couldn't, if we sold it, we had to sell it to each landowner. Is this trail still under that, do you know, or can somebody, that might be a question you might want to know. the answer to.
We'll look into that, but to my understanding, no. And reason being is when we acquired it, we actually acquired it from the province, not a rail company. So the province had actually taken it over as ARIC, Agricultural Rural Investment Corp or something like that. So we had obtained it as a continuous asset from ARIC with a provincial grant, however that worked. But in any event, it's some internal exchange of money.
So they had to bribe us to take it.
Probably not, probably just laughed all the way.
No, but they're getting a grant. But anyway, okay, that probably, I know these other ones, it's under the Railroad Act.
They run.
But we'll look into that. It hasn't come up in any of our discussions with legal counsel in the time I've been here.
Richard, the third place was Frontenac.
No,
No.
it starts with a P.
Oh, Papineau.
Papineau, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we're back to tenants agreement. Oh, did you have something? Sorry, did you have something?
I'd just like to say, I watched people on the other side of this table look at each other and shake their heads and say it still has to get through the board.
Yes, well, yes.
My suggestion is that if you do wish it to get through the board, that to take a look at how many people have very little background, like me. I know there are a couple at least who are only here, we've only been here for 2 years. We need a little more knowledge to be able to make a reasonable decision or even an analysis. Because I didn't vote because I just didn't feel I knew enough.
Yeah, and yeah, I think like the map, and I'm gonna talk
The
to you
map,
after
yeah.
the map, and I think also, I remember the bridge and we did the minimum. So what do we believe some of the outstanding risk items are, where are they, and yeah, so. Anyway, yes, I agree with you.
And very briefly,
Yeah.
how we got it, who we acquired it from, and how much it cost in the first place, and how much it costs us. It sounds like it's costing us about $15,000 a year to allow it to gently degrade into a very high risk situation, which I think everybody else in Canada is too smart to even take from us. Except maybe the counties on a lease agreement, if we're lucky.
Maybe we could put a pipeline down.
But, well, maybe you want to make that clear too, it's a lease agreement to own. Like the lease agreement is just a land title cert. It's because they don't have clear title. If you had something to sell, but you don't have anything to sell.
Okay, well, make that clear too.
All right,
Okay,
yep. I think Sally's not in agreement, and so Scott and Sally and team will try to present the complete the background and everything you
All
wanted to know
informed
about the
about
community
it.
trail, and what the risks and costs are, so that the decision can be made with more information. Okay, so back to tenants.
Okay. So, like I said, the purpose of this item is to just bring up a discussion on how to deal with certain intricacies when it comes to some of the tenants and partners that we have. Not only here, but at our Mill Tail property, it addresses a bit of the Cape Feed here as well. So we have a broad variety of different partner organizations that make regular use of our properties in some sort of fashion. Most of these are longstanding partnerships with either not-for-profit or community-based organizations. Some of these groups have been moved to a more firm lease agreement or MOUs that lay out the terms and conditions of the use of the properties, and some are still operating off of past history and a less formal agreement. So here at the office, we have Mississippi Madawaska Land Trust, MMLT, who has recently been moved to a more formal lease agreement that is built to be able to recover the costs that are associated with having them as a tenant. Photocopying, printing, office space, that sort of thing. At the Milliken Tail, we have the Naismith Men's Shed, who have an existing MOU that provides them access to, depends on how you want to phrase it, so the caretaker's cottage, or the field garage, which is the building just on the left-hand side as soon as you enter the property to the opposite side of the gatehouse. So they use that for the spring and summer months as more of a clubhouse. And in return for that, we get, which is now a significant amount of involvement and basically labor in helping around the property for certain jobs that our crew wouldn't either have the time to get to, or it allows us to get projects done faster with their help. We also have the Royal Astronomical Society, and locally known as the Fred Lossing Observatory, which has entered into a 5-year lease. Right now, the current version is up for renewal. They're charged a small site leasing fee of approximately $200 a year, plus about a 10% increase on a year-to-year basis. Most of their costs are their own. We've recently taken on the service of clearing snow for them on a cost recovery basis. The one item that has traditionally not been included in the lease, or I guess on a cost recovery basis, is we will go over and cut the grass in their parking area for them once in a while. It's not a huge cost to the authority. It's done on our way to cut the rest of the field that's in the back of the mill, but it is an increased cost that we currently, under the current lease, don't recover. We also have the Mississippi Valley Field Naturalists. They maintain an office space at the gatehouse. Traditionally had use of the facilities at no cost for board meetings and some of their programming needs. They've traditionally been charged approximately $50 a month. Again, it's a small cost for the rented space. When we say rented space, we're speaking more of the office. They have been partners in a supporting role for some of the events that have run at the mill. And there also is a potential there for kind of an increased collaboration based on the fact of the return of our education program. So there is a good tie in there that we haven't quite had the chance to explore with them. And we don't have a real written agreement in place. The final group there at the Milliken Hill is the Ramsey Women's Institute, and they operate Tea on the Lawn. Traditionally, it's been twice a week. Last year, it was reduced to once a week just based on their availability to be able to put it on. So staff have supported through the usage of the lawn by the museum. So just outside the museum, down below, access to the kitchen in the museum. And then staff have traditionally taken the lead on the setup and tear down of the chairs and the tables for the event. And a lot of that has to do with the age and ability of some of the members of the Ramsey Women's Institute to be able to take that on. Again, it's not a huge kind of burden, but it is something that we have taken on. And traditionally at the end of the year, they have supported with some sort of form of donation, whether it be a couple $100. They've also supported our events with some in-kind donation over the past. But I wouldn't say it's quite at a cost recoverable level at this point. And then the final group that is noted in the report there is, we do have an extensive agreement in place with the Snow Road and Calabogie snowmobile clubs for them to be able to operate on the KMP. It also, so this has gone through legal counsel. It allows them to do work and helping upgrades to the trail as they are one of the main users. So all these groups are fairly important to the community relations with the authority. They do help increase foot traffic and exposure to our sites. So staff had fairly regular communication with these groups and kind of have informed them of the change in legislation when it comes to how our finances are now shifting to a more cost recoverable method for these category 3 services. Most of these groups are largely volunteer driven, and a sharp rise in costs could impact their ability to deliver services as well. So with that, staff are looking for opinion and I guess a guided approach on updating some of these agreements.
Jeannie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question, storage capacity. So who's responsible for loss or damage if something should happen? Are we carrying extra insurance for them?
We're expecting most of these groups, if not all these groups, especially now, to come in with their own insurance. So we should be added to their insurance policy. And that'll be part of the ones that don't have a firm documented agreement. That'll be part of documenting that agreement. We'll be putting that into play.
Okay, thank you.
Any thoughts from the committee? Richard?
Yeah, this is pretty tough. But none of these organizations that I was thinking about that I thought, well, the likes of the field naturalists, if you don't have any expenses, there's no incentive to try to raise money or do anything, right? Like if we don't need to charge rent, then I don't need to worry about fundraising or what the membership cost is or anything else. It is to play devil's advocate is the other side of it. Likes of the Women's Institute, there's no way. Time will take care of that. And not much. But no, it's a tough, and then to try to set a policy across the board makes it pretty impossible to take them in because they're all different. I'd really, when you're looking at generating money for these, whatever they're called, threes, it'd be from my experience in any of these things, it's when you get new users, when you get new groups in, that you don't allow them to use it for free, and this is the cost. If you can stimulate some of these groups that you're looking for a bigger contribution, maybe that's the way around it. But again, as I say, on the other hand, if you're not going to charge anything, then I have no incentive to try to bring in more field mentors to try to promote themselves, get more members that pay and or get a foundation that would help them or something. There is no incentive if you give it for free. But anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, Paul?
My thought is that this is a very interesting presentation. Could we review it again in about 5 years?
Yeah.
Can I just ask a clarification? Is the MVFN paying $50 a month now? That's what it's showing, Scott, that they are paying $50 a month?
So it was traditionally, but they haven't been charged in recent,
Okay,
in recent for that.
okay. But like MLT is paying the 3,600.
So that, yeah, that was recently
Okay,
put into action.
okay, great. Very good.
Sorry, just for clarification, who is paying 3,600?
The land trust that has the office space.
Oh, okay. I just didn't hear it properly.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Well, time will tell. I was surprised. I thought the only existence for TL Milan was to bring money to the Milton Tail. I thought that's why we did it, and anything that they made above cost, they gave to the. MOK, honestly, I do think that some of these people could pay a little more than they've got sweetheart deals. The little old ladies, but some of the others, yes, and I do think that we'll kill everything if we have a blanket policy and get too bureaucratic, but
I would assume they
we
pay
do
for
have,
parking.
oh, I'm
Sorry,
sorry,
my fault.
we do have to get some money coming in there. Or we are gonna be stuck in a KP trail situation.
But they would have a membership and MVCA and do parking or something. I mean, that could be one of the requirements, at least so that we generate some funds.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of just sitting down with them one-on-one and letting them know that the policies change, the province has done it. We're not squeezing them out, but just to see what's possible. I like the idea of an arrangement where at least they're carrying their own liability insurance for using our facilities and seeing what's possible. I mean, the Royal Astronomical Society, if put it to them as showing the cost that people pay to have weddings in the conclave versus the services they're getting, and then just see what they have to offer. Because it's a lovely facility, and it's just been a lot of money has been put into that facility recently, so there's money there. So, and if it's just a matter of $200 a year, I'm sure they can afford a few more $100 a year to cough up. But I think just showing them what the financial reality is, and that we understand that this is a shop we like to negotiate something with them. It is a sweetheart deal, but yeah, that's the benefits, all right. And so we have that relationship. So I would go one-on-one with these groups as much as possible. You never know, the Ramsey Women's Institute might cough up another $500. So if they see how much of that space is worth to host a wedding versus their tea.
Now raise the price of the tea cup.
Yeah, they can,
You know?
and they can do it. It's a nice experience and yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts? Yes, Stacey.
I would be surprised if those that historically would be using it are paying parking or an annual pass. So maybe that is part of that discussion. Because I just have, I have seen that it's historical, it's fine. Seems to have been the message too. It's okay.
So you can sell them like a $500 parking pass to use for the season.
I don't think we have to micromanage staff.
No.
No,
I agree with Jeff, go into it and see what we can get. Because some of them, they're really getting a nice free ride almost.
Right, sorry, I think Jean had her hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment as kind of on the same vein as Jeff and Mary Lou. I think it's, sitting down with them one-on-one, really just showing them the costs. I mean, there are costs, we incur costs, whether it's, upgrading the parking or paying the insurance or whatever. I think most reasonable people, if they realize there's a cost attached to it, they'll find a way.
Great, and then I think Richard?
Yeah, I think along with the costs, though, we should, I think Jeff meant, like the reality of what the province, that this almost has to be cost recovery, or going towards that. That this, because it's what's it, stage 3, or what's it called? Category 3 thing. I'll tell you, our seniors were meeting and using our hall, and of course we have a new hall, and we were setting up. It got to the point, and I'm sure it is downhill, that we had to set up for them. And so we told them we have to charge you for setting up, for staff time, for setting up chairs and tables and tearing down, and the money just appeared. they offered us, they offered us $10.
First off,
Yeah,
All right,
they said we couldn't get 2 staff people for under 75.
all right, I'm gonna say, we need to cut off because I think we have an interesting conversation coming up. But you now have some input, and if anyone has any other ideas, please send them to Scott and Sally and Stacy, okay? So we're gonna move on to our last item on the agenda, which is the financial update by Stacy. So, take it away.
So this is the unaudited, there are still potentially some audit adjustments, but they are, I'd say 90% done. There's not any significant adjustments they have found, so this is very close. We're on the operating overall budget coming in about 30,000 under. This is a bit of a change from what we had been projecting, because there was a severance settlement that is fully expensed in 2024. So that was a bit of a hit that we were initially anticipating. Things are up and down, part within different areas, and a significant part of that is the use of the automated timesheets. We reallocated people's time based on where did they actually work on, so that was some shifting between different areas, as well as a shift. There was some time on capital projects that got reallocated back because there wasn't as much work done. In category 2, there was a new area and there were some budget issues there that have resulted in having actually a fair chunk of surplus. And that is one of the things in the report, is how to deal with that surplus. We're recommending that it reallocate it to the category 3 reserve. So it's still staying within the category 2 and 3 and under the MOUs. But the category 3 reserve is quite short. Partly because we're expanding those programs, and the reserve target is based on covering 1 year of salary for the staff. Is there any particular questions or areas? Again, we're bringing this every quarter, so I don't think there's any big surprises.
sure, why not? I'm sorry, Sally. I don't know why we're wanting to do something. Category 3 blows up on us. Why should we put a bunch of funds for it? Should we just cut it out at that point? Very
So can you speak a little louder?
Hmm?
Can you speak a little louder?
Okay, so you're looking at taking stuff from category 2 and allocating it to category 3, correct? But my saying is category 3 are kind of nice to have. So why would you try and hold the category 3 stuff over a year by putting a bunch of funds into it, keep going? Because at that point, it's demonstrating that it's not possible to run. Okay, because most of it is your education programs, correct? Your mill and tail.
So there's more than that. There's the whole stewardship program.
Okay, but they're education programs, communication, they're supposed to be self-funded.
Eventually.
Eventually. But if they start where they start going down the other way, then it's gonna be time to cut them out. You're not gonna, shouldn't have resources to say, well, we're gonna carry this for another year and see if we can't finally make more money next year. I guess that's all I'm saying. I just don't see putting a whole bunch of reserves in category 3.
It is in the reserve policy set out that way, and it was intended to cover grant. You did a grant 1 year, not the other, to be able to have it continue, but it was more for the ups and downs of potential grants and funding.
So, couple of things. Nice to have, except MVCA has a 5-year contract with all the municipalities to deliver on those. So we're.
But you could go back to the municipality and say, this is not gonna work. I mean, the municipality would say, MVCA, you got to spend this money. If you came back to us and said, okay, we're canceling this program, it's not working. I'm sure our council would be like, cool.
So to Stacy's point though, I mean, we're invested in making these programs work. Part of making these programs work is setting aside monies where able to allow for fluctuations in grant programs and the like, which, for example, last year, we didn't get a single student grant for the summer students program, right? Part of our operating reserves, both categories 1, 2, and 3, all are designed in part, as Stacy said, to have a balance such that we can take those year-over-year fluctuations as grants come and go. So when you're designing and delivering any program, I would like to think at least that you have the long-term, the plan is that they succeed and you work in that direction, understanding that there might be bumps along the way. And if we sustain repeated bumps, we'd absolutely be coming back to the board as you would expect us to say, listen, is this or is this not a viable program going forward? So where we are right now is category 2 was actually over budgeted this year. There was an error at the budgeting stage, so we have this surplus. So the category 2 operating reserve is at its limit. It doesn't need more money. So the question is, we could give the money back to you, which is one of the options we put on the table. We could just turn that surplus category 2 money back to the municipalities and you get it according to percentage of the levy. Or we could overfund the operating reserve for category 2. Or we could put it in the category 3, which is at a fraction of where it needs to be.
You
And
can't put it up to category 1.
no, we can't.
Because I was thinking it would be nice to wait for
Well,
the dam reconstruction fund.
That's kind of. Just kind of-
Can I just ask a quick question in relation to what you're discussing right now? So what is the data that we're drawing from? So you say, maybe carry it on and to cover fluctuations, ups and downs, but what data are we drawing on? So have we got a 5-year block of time that we can see what the pattern is? I get both. You're both making really good points. I guess maybe what Paul's saying is, when do you call it a day? And then your point is, well, you know what? We could have an up and a down, and we're trying to, judge or give the services that we've said we're going to give. And let's face it, I mean, giving money, once you've got money in your hand, it's always hard to give it back. I mean, the municipalities would be probably glad to have it back, but do we want to do that?
Yeah, Richard?
So we're basically talking about allocating the surplus, is that what it is?
Correct.
And Sally, you're saying we can't decide, because we have a policy about how much goes in reserves, or like if it's a surplus, can we not put it, and so I want to continue, that's one question. And then the other thing, to Paul's point about going into, somebody tell me if I'm wrong, but it's going into reserve. If it goes into category 3 reserve, like we still decide when that reserve gets spent. And if it doesn't, if we want to put it in, if we want to drag it there, then put it in category 2 in a year's time, we could do that. Basically what we're saying is take the surplus and put it into reserve.
in essence, yes, we're asking you to put it in reserve and we're asking you to direct us to put it into the category 3 reserve.
But when you go to spend that out of category 3, you have to come back and put that in the budget, it's coming back.
That's correct.
Yes, very good.
Just for clarification, we are allowed to transfer a reserve from category 2 to 3. Thought 3 was very special.
So just to recap, and I'm going to go back and check the actual regulations on this. So there's 3 things. Category 1 is mandatory programs and services. Category 2 are basically bilateral agreements with your municipalities that we will deliver services for your individual municipality, that otherwise you would be delivering, or responsible assumption for. And then category 3 are these recommended programs. So it's the museum, it's the stewardship program, it's the education program. So the regulation definitely says you have to have separate operating reserves and capital reserves for each of these. So it's fairly distinct on that. And then when we set up those reserves, we had you sign off on a policy that said, here's how much, here's the name of the reserve, here's its purpose, and here's its target value, and where it would be drawn from. So that's where it's a target value that we're saying category 2's been met, category 1's been met. It's category 3 that needs the money based upon approved by the board about where we want our various reserves to be. So that's why we're recommending category 3. Can you transfer monies between them? You probably could transfer them between all 3, but your category 1 and 2 are where they need to be, you know? So it's your 3 that needs the money.
Again, where does the K and B trail sit under category 2?
1.
One. Why is it under 1? I can understand dams, but
So
a recreational trail, I can't understand this.
conservation,
1.
so mandatory programs and services are dams, are flood forecasting and warning. So anything having to do with hazard management. So all our planning and regulations, those are all category 1. Also under category 1 are conservation areas. So conservation areas, basic maintenance, toilets, parking lots, that sort of stuff is all category 1. If you start doing enhancements like a museum or running education programs at them, that's not category.
But if I, sorry, go ahead.
So if I understand that with a very low reserve in Cat 3, we top it up a bit because the others have met the limits, not limits, but guidelines. But would it not, if we were to run into unforeseen expenses, say on land issues for K and P trail, would we pull from Cat 3 reserve to help pay that?
I do not think you would need to, number 1. Number 2, your policy doesn't say that that's how you will use that money. So the board would have to make an exception to its own policy if you wanted to pull the money from a category 3 reserve to apply it to a category 1 project. So if you make this allocation, you are committing that money for category 3 purposes.
Yeah, sorry, I have a question, which is, just going back kind of to Paul's point, and it's kind of more just so I understand. We have this $100,000 surplus. Could it be allocated to a capital reserve? I mean, it's from the levy. I don't, why wouldn't we want to, for example, put that money into the dam infrastructure reserve? I'm just wondering, like, how free is this money? I mean, sorry, not free,
Mobile.
how free mobile, how mobile is this money for allocation? And rather than category 3, are there not other reserves that are more critical to the mandate of Mississippi Valley Conservation Program?
There isn't another reserve that's as low percentage wise from what the target
But that
and the
doesn't
policy
matter,
is.
but does that matter? Because I just want to, let me just finish my thought here, but does that matter? Because it's a matter of the priority of the organization and category, really, the dams fit in category 1. And so shouldn't the surplus be allocated there rather than category 3? I'm just asking the question of whether we have that flexibility to allocate this in any way we wish, or even split it up and allocate it in, like, we don't have to put all 100,000 into one reserve. Like, what is our
There is an
flexibility?
additional element to the plan. Any other surplus for this year would be going to the water control structures. This was just dealing with that specific category.
I'm just trying to understand what we have the flexibility to do. We can put, basically, we can take the 100,000 and put it in any reserve we wish, or give it back to municipalities. Is that a true statement?
So I would say the board has the discretion to do anything it wants in this regard.
Okay, so yes, Richard.
So it's amazing to me how prescription it is, that prescribed it is, how we, these reserves and how you're moving them and stuff like. Our municipality does not have that. We have all kinds of reserves, but if it comes to crunch, it's coming, you know, and so can we create a contingency reserve? Can we do that? Like, to me, you have these reserves for different ones who know people are a little bit worried about putting into. My main thing is what's been said, flexibility, and the ability to be able to take it when we need it from someplace and use it in category 1, 2, or 3. So can there be a contingency reserve created and that you could drop this into? That at the time when the board is doing a budget, that if category 1 or 2 or 3 needs more money, it could be pulled out of, and because this is found money right now, and but I just think we need, I think what everybody's talking about is to have flexibility in where it goes and not prescribed right into it.
I'd like to respond to that. I'd like to respond to Richard's suggestion.
All right, Jeannie, go
So,
ahead.
so unfortunately, I'm going to just say it in plain English, that's almost like padding the budget, having an extra contingency reserve, because you're taking money from each municipality for levies, but you're creating a contingency. So really, you're taking more money than you actually have to take. And this is how my mind sees it. Maybe I might be totally off base, but I don't think you could have a contingency just in case you happen to get too much money, because my way of thinking is then you're taking too much money in the beginning. Am I wrong?
Does Leonard Collins not have a contingency fund?
So we ran into issues with this a few years ago with John Hall, who wanted to have a contingency in our reserves, and the idea of that was raised, and there was a lot of pushback on it, saying no, because your contingency plan that you're having, you're going out to the public and saying, you know, this is what the levy is this is what we want you to pay, and then at the end of the year we'd have like a $250,000 surplus. But you know what, technically it wasn't a surplus. We took the money in I think bad faith and had all this money left over, and then said, well, let's just put it in our reserves. Well, I don't think that's kosher. That's just me personally.
All right, Sally, and then Mary Lou. So Sally, respond.
So I'll just give you all a bit of background, because not all of you were here at the time when we did approve our reserve policy. So we looked at what best practice was in terms of the establishment and management of reserves. And it clearly said, you know, you need to have a stated purpose, you have to have a stated target, you have to have rules around when you take or transfer monies from those reserves, etc. So when we set up these various reserves, the targets are actually calculated. There's an algorithm that Stacy monitors and is tracking to make sure, you know, how are we tracking against the target, because it has to be for a stated purpose. To your point, Jeannie, you know, you have to have a stated purpose. Now, within that, though, our operating reserve, to Richard's point, provides for if we have to let SCAP go, if we have pat leaves, if we have an insurance claim. So it built into that formula are all those what ifs. So you could consider our operating category 1 operating reserve as our contingency fund. It's very prescriptive how much we'll set aside for those various contingencies, incidents if they occur. So we have over the past few years been able to get that now to where it meets its target. And so I'm very comfortable that should things arise, that we have the monies to draw from, and to which then we could replenish as needed in next year's budget. And in every year's budget, we do identify monies that we would be setting into reserves to help build them to achieve the targets set out in the policy. So I'm very comfortable with our reserve policy and that the approach we're taking is transparent and responsible. And I also would say it's not aggressive in that the targets for our capital program is not long term. It's basically helping us to afford our 10-year program and not a whole lot more than that. So I'm very comfortable with our reserve program.
I'll tell you what I think I'll do is go to the vote, because what I need to understand is whether people are comfortable putting 100,000 into category 3. I think that's really the issue. It's the category 3 as an issue, and the board having the flexibility to decide where that surplus goes. Yeah, oh, sorry, Kathy, I didn't see your hand up.
I just wanted to say thanks to Sally for that comment on that. I mean, my general thinking is that given we don't know what the thoughts are of the next this provincial government continuing and the federal government and what our futures are, I think reserves are critical. And I think if it meets our policy, I'm fine with it. I think City of Ottawa probably has maybe, well, I know that the City of Ottawa contributes more. I just find that an organization can't operate without clear reserves and security in behind. Depending on all kinds of things we can't predict. So anyway, I'm perfectly comfortable with everything that is recommended here.
All right, so I'm going to read the resolution. Resolved that the Finance and Administration Advisory Committee recommend that the Board of Directors approve drawdown of the Category 3 operating reserve by $21,007 to cover a shortfall in daily parking pass revenues. Allocation of the Category 2 operating surplus of $100,000 in accordance with option 2 of this report, and allocation of any remaining year-end surplus after audit adjustments to the water control structure reserve. So is there anyone who will move? So Jeff Atkinson moves, Kathy Curry seconds. Any more discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. I have 4 in favor, which is not a majority, I believe. No, that's not a majority.
You want to vote on it individually?
Oh,
Yes, we could vote on these individually, if that's an option. Well, did I count right? So who voted? I had Kathy, yes. I had Jeff and Roy, and I had Mary Lou. So that's 4.
and how many are here?
No. How many were no? Well, I have Jeannie, Paul, Richard, and I think, and myself.
Oh,
But you're not voting. Well, I'm not allowed to vote?
Yeah,
No.
Oh, all right, well, then there's.
depends on the rules, but you can vote anytime if you want.
Well, that's what I don't know.
The ties are lost vote. But it depends what rules you use.
Usually it says a tiebreaker.
Oh, all right,
But-
well, then I
but
vote,
I
well, then,
would have to check the
all right, well, then the no's, there are only 3 no's. But I honestly think that we should redirect the money, but that's just my opinion as chair. So, I don't know.
Check the rules.
Yeah, how about, do you mind if I check the rules and come back?
All right, we're just taking a
Well,
5-minute
We're
break.
voting as a type of.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but there is no time.
time.
It's 4 by 3.
I know, but it would be then.
Yeah, I'll change my vote, we can go 5. Okay, I just,
My thing is, why can't we just compromise? Like, who said we have to put the whole
Well, that's
$100,000?
exactly, my next thing was going to be, to actually vote on them individually or to split the 100,000, like I don't, sorry, Kathy, yes?
Just Janet, so in terms of the vote, so the vote is whatever the vote is, but the vote is only the vote, this particular motion, like there wasn't another alternative, right? Like, so if there was another alternative with a different motion.
Yes,
Right,
yes.
exactly.
You'd have to make an amendment.
And it's our recommendation to the
Well, no,
board,
that-
the board can always amend.
Well, I know, I'm just
What we
trying,
said.
absolutely, but, I guess the point is there were 4 yeses, 3 nos,
That's 8.
right? I actually think we should be, I would vote no if I had a vote, so we're trying to determine so we were tied. Basically
allowed to
at
vote.
4-4, if
you're
I'm allowed to vote.
it's defeated.
If I'm not allowed to vote, then its motion is approved and we can take it to the board. So we're just checking to see whether I am allowed to vote. And if I am, then we have to go back and we have to amend the resolution.
Now we just defeat the motion and then we tell staff to go back and bring it.
Go back and bring another, okay, we can do that. They have to bring it again.
Us
Although
trying that.
I believe they need a decision. Oh, no, this is for the 24, right?
Yeah.
But you're gonna need a decision.
If you can, again, if you want to just separate them and you just don't touch the category 3, you delay that, it's that for the audit statements, for them to be able to move money, that could just sit and it could stay in the category 2 reserve until you resolve it.
But I still think it's
But I
to
would
go back
like-
to staff and come back with a clean report rather than trying to amend this report that says certain things in the body and then, well, why did they do this?
Well, except that Janet, you've taken a vote, right? So what happens now is you have to determine what the result of your vote is, okay? And
That's what I gotta do
if it
first.
fails, it fails. If it passes, it passes. If it fails, then we have nothing. So a new
Right.
motion would have to come forward. If it passes and you don't like it, amend it at board.
Correct.
So we're just waiting for clarification to see whether you can vote or not.
Correct, which I always thought I could, so I don't know.
I'm sure in our procedural bylaws that you don't have to, but you can, but you must when it's a tie, when it's a tie.
Right.
It's not-
Must.
That's how it works in our procedural bylaw as well. The
Yeah.
chair has the option.
There we go, she's back.
You are entitled to a vote, Chair.
Okay, I am entitled to a vote. All right, well,
It's tough.
no, then it is.
It
tied.
loses.
No, it
So that's a defeat if it's a tie.
It's a defeat, right? All right, so now I guess the issue is, do we wish to then direct staff to take this back and have an amended report? Or do we wish to vote on an amended resolution whereby we take out item B, which is the allocation of the 100,000 to category 3? Oh,
Is this time sensitive? Is this?
well, I think it is. That's what I'm.
On what date?
So if I may?
Yes.
Stacy, can you confirm, I think we are looking for direction from the committee and in turn the board so that we can finalize the year-end financial statement.
Yes, so that the allocation would be part of that.
Right.
So the bottom line is we need an allocation direction by the next board meeting. So,
Well, but essentially, does the allocation of the surplus not automatically go into the category 2 reserve?
Yes.
Right, so we could actually take out item B and the 100K just goes into the category 2 reserve.
Yes.
And then it can be moved around later by motion of the board with another report or recommendation or whatever else. Or you could even do it, bring it to the finance committee at the next meeting or something, but essentially you don't have to have it. You can get your audited reports with that 100,000 in the category 2. You're comfortable? All right.
I'm okay with that.
Everyone okay with that? So
Yeah,
I
so read that
read an amended resolution. Resolved that the Finance and Administration Advisory Committee recommend that the Board of Directors approve drawdown of the Category 3 operating reserve by $21,007 to cover a shortfall in daily parking pass revenues and allocation of any remaining year-end surplus after audit adjustments to the Water Control Structure Reserve. Okay, so I need someone to move. So Paul moves. Sorry. Let me just get the second and then. Oh, and Jeff second.
I'll second.
All right, so any comments?
I
So-
actually don't understand it well enough to vote, and I actually have to go to another meeting. But I literally don't understand exactly what's going on here, and I'm really sorry, but I do have to go to another meeting. I've got people waiting on me.
All right,
But does that mean the 21,000 is coming out of the 100?
no, there's already a reserve in category 3, if you look at,
No, but we're taking 21,000 out of category 3.
correct, to cover a
And,
shortfall this year.
and And we're taking, with that motion, we're putting all the 100,000 into category
We're
one.
not, we actually are, by virtue of not allocating it, it will automatically go into the category 2.
Yeah.
And that'll come to the board.
And that comes to the board.
Okay. I just think we should be putting the 21,000 in there with the 100, but anyway, we can discuss that in the board. We can do it at the board, I'm not gonna.
Whatever, what does the committee want? We basically
No, no.
have a
We're
motion
gonna
on
vote,
the
it's too
floor.
early.
All right,
Go
all right, so
ahead.
I've had a
We have
mover
two
and
more
seconder,
movers.
so all in favor? Okay, so I think that then closes that out. You can take it to the board, and if you want to make a recommendation for the 100,000, you do it at the board. Okay?
And thank you for everybody's input.
Yeah, yeah, no, okay.
And I will go back and check the regulation on what's permitted, yeah.
Yeah, I think the issue is the category 3 and putting all of that in category 3, and we understand the targets, but because it is a discretionary, we understand, right? Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm not. All right, so now we are at an adjournment. Resolved that the Finance and Administration Advisory Committee meeting be adjourned. Paul and Jeannie.
Okay.
All right, thank you all for your patience. It took the full 2 hours. All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
It was brutal. I need 10 less than one tonight.